Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. In today's tutorial, we'll be going through how to run a Jupyter environment inside an active deployment using port forwarding. This technique will allow you to develop and iterate your code from inside a deployment environment. Let's get started. First, let's quickly talk about why you might want to do this. Running Jupyter directly in a UbiOps deployment can help you quickly iterate your code and develop in the exact runtime environment it'll be deployed in. This is especially useful for data scientists who need to experiment with different models and data processing techniques in a consistent environment. But remember, this method does open up some security vulnerabilities. For example, any secret environment variables that you've set up in UbiOps for that deployment will be accessible from inside the notebook environment. So be careful with sensitive information. With that said, here's a quick overview of what we'll be covering today. Creating a deployment that spawns a Jupyter environment, turning on the deployment, accessing the Jupyter URL. Let's jump into step 1. We'll start by creating our deployment package. First up, the deployment script. This deployment.py file generates a unique token and launches a Jupyter notebook with a specified IP and token. We also included an exception to handle errors just in case Jupyter fails to start. Then it fetches the external IP of the deployment instance and prints the URL to access the notebook in the deployment's logs. Or you can get the URL by creating a request to the deployment. Next, we create the requirements file. We need Jupyter to be available in our deployment environment, so these packages are required at a minimum. Now that we have our deployment script and requirements file ready in the same directory, we can just zip the entire package so it's ready to upload to UbiOps. Alright, now we need to create the deployment in UbiOps and upload the deployment package. This can be done through the UbiOps web app or directly in your notebook. Navigate to your UbiOps project. Create a deployment without any input fields and set the output field to notebook URL with a data type string. Then create a deployment version with an instance type that's compatible with port forwarding, and set the deployment port and public port manually using TCP. You can check which instance types are compatible in your project settings. Don't forget to upload the zip deployment package. Note that we're setting the minimum number of instances to 1 here, so the deployment will keep running until you change that back to 0. When you're not using the deployment, make sure you make that change. Otherwise, you'll end up burning through all your credits. Okay, now here's how we do it in Python. Import your libraries, set your names and paths, then use the UbiOps client library to connect to the UbiOps API and create your deployment and version. Alright, so after clicking create or running your code, your deployment will start building. Once it's ready, you can access the Jupyter environment. Here's how. You can find the Jupyter URL in the deployment logs or by sending a request to the deployment, either through the web app or via Python. Once you have that URL, copy it and paste it into your browser. You should see the Jupyter interface. From here, you can start editing and running your code live in a deployed environment. You can also connect to the remote Jupyter server with VS Code. This way, you can save the changes you made to your deployment locally so that you don't lose all your progress when the deployment shuts down. Here's how you do it. Open a notebook file in VS Code, click on the kernel picker button in the top right corner, then click Select Another Kernel, and choose Existing Jupyter Server. Paste the Jupyter URL in the input field and press Enter. You should now be connected to the Jupyter environment running on UbiOps. To shut down the Jupyter deployment, simply set the minimum number of instances back to 0. Remember, the Jupyter environment is stateless, so make sure you save your work externally. And that's it. You've successfully set up a Jupyter environment with port forwarding on UbiOps. If you need to activate port forwarding for instance types in your subscription, reach out to a member of the UbiOps team and we'll get you set up. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more tutorials. See you next time!